which is first? Then
The
today.
first one in the book, the yellow.
Today.
Oh.
Okay.
Second one. Can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Good morning. It is my great honor to welcome all of you to today's commencement exercises for Thomas MacLaren School. On behalf of our whole faculty, a little bit represented here, and all the staff of Thomas MacLaren, we welcome all of you, parents and siblings, grandparents, aunts, uncles, friends, board members, alumni, everybody who's watching at home. And of course, we welcome you, our graduates. It's a thrill to be able to see each other face to face, and I'm so grateful that so many of your parents were able to join us today. To those graduates watching from home, you are, of course, welcome as well. I want to thank in particular all the leadership of El Paso County for making this live celebration possible. Thank you to the many staff here at MacLaren, especially Mrs. Oram and Mr. Coleman and his team who made our humble soccer field look so lovely today. Graduates, I think each of you knows that today is bigger than you. Today is a celebration of all those who have helped you to get here. Your parents, your siblings, your friends, and the faculty. This entire community has supported you this far, and we are thrilled to share this day with you. We were able to honor you last night individually. You're quite an amazing group. Your commitment to our community and to each other is a beautiful thing, and we are going to miss you. Now, a word of logistics. If you haven't yet, please feel free to remove your mask by the elastic bands, and you can keep it off until we are dismissed at the end of the ceremony. So now it is my great pleasure to introduce to you our graduate award winners who will jointly give our valedictory address. As we have 3 winners of this award, we have asked each to give a brief reflection on their experience of the MacLaren community. Consider the 3 speeches, 3 different lenses of a shared experience. And now I would like to welcome Emily Grace Kirkwood, Hunter Adam, and Juliet Hall.
Mrs. Hall, Mr. Alvarado, faculty, parents, board members, and all those watching at home, Juliet, Hunter, and I are honored to speak to you today on behalf of the class of 2020. In one of our senior, hats wanted to fly. Okay. In one of our senior plays, Ondine, a sea nymph falls in love with a knight. In order to be with him, she must renounce her nature and live as a human. Near the end of the play, Ondine is put on trial and accused of being a malicious creature from an alien world. In her defense, the king of the sea responds as follows. Write this into your record, judge. This Ondine was the most human being that ever lived. She was human by choice. This brought me to consider whether we too have a choice in our humanity. Our school's mission statement reads, "The goal of Thomas MacLaren School is to develop young men and women who are fully human and fully awake to the world." Though guidance is certainly needed, I believe that it falls to each of us to choose whether we will be fully human and fully awake. In Langston Hughes' poem, Mother to Son, a mother describes her life as a staircase. We are reminded each year by the sixth graders who recite this poem that her life is no crystal stair. It has been rough, with splinters and tacks and bare floors. She tells her son that despite the obstacles, she has kept climbing. I don't think I'm alone in saying that my memories of MacLaren are peppered with obstacles that at times seem too challenging to overcome. Sometimes it required late nights, tired mornings, and frustrated tears. Others, it required the humility to admit that we don't understand and the willingness to ask for help. We labored to play hard material like Puccini's Crisantemi in orchestra, to be bold on the stage of our drama performances, and to distinguish what we see and what we think we see in art. We stumbled as we transitioned from viewing math as just simple mechanical operations to a language that can be discussed and explored. We stared at MATLAB programs for hours just to discover that you had only misplaced a single parenthesis in your code. We puzzled over the very makeup of our world in physics and chemistry while we questioned our experience of it during HL. We leave MacLaren having reached a new landing, with greater understanding of ourselves and one another, and with the ability to learn. We've learned what it takes to question what we have accepted as reality, and to admit the possibility that we have been wrong. These are the skills that equip us to reach the full potential of our humanity. Somewhere along our journey, we found that we aren't climbing alone. After all, it was on this flight of stairs that I met all of you. Once in 11th grade, when I was struggling to feel like I had accomplished anything in worth in life, a few of my classmates decided to write notes to each of us for no other reason than to just tell us how much they cared. They didn't know what I was dealing with, but their cards expressed how much I had impacted their lives and how much they appreciated me. There have been countless such moments when even the simplest thing made such a difference just when I needed it. The love, support, and inspiration I have received from all of you has urged me on when the floors were cold and bare. And through it all, our teachers have been right there with us to push us past our fears, indifference, and lack of understanding. I'm truly grateful for all the effort, dedication, and love our teachers have invested in us. I would like you to consider, however, that it was still our choice to make. It was up to us whether we would follow their guidance and make the most out of our years here. And just as we had to choose what we would take from our education, we must choose what we will take from life. On Wednesday, March 4th, I wrote the following in my planner. Lately, I find myself increasingly overcome with my own failures and with the seemingly ceaseless sin, the thick, suffocating darkness that is in this world. So much so that I nearly failed to realize how beautiful it is that I am sitting in a classroom, the sun's airy projection on the wall, reading quietly among these people whom I've grown to love so dearly. That I can be here, sipping chai, and enjoy the fact that they too can enjoy the simple pleasures of a cup of tea in a quiet room on a reading day here at Thomas MacLaren. Thank you, Lord. On that day, I had to choose, despite being overwhelmed, to be awake in the present moment and to appreciate all that was before me. We have to actively seek reality, even when all we see before us is darkness. It is then that you will be able to look up to see the light streaming through the window and remember all the beautiful things that surround you. Thank you.
Aristotle says that happiness is the goal of human life. Happiness, according to Aristotle, is a complete and sufficient good, meaning all desires are satisfied. In order to have a genuinely happy life, one must pursue good and strive to be virtuous. Your own happiness can depend on the people you surround yourself with, meaning people with good intentions are often surrounded by happiness. I have been grateful enough to have experienced this happiness in the MacLaren community. One thing that truly makes this community special is how many people desire to have friends that will push you to do better and encourage you to always give your best. Time and again, I watch my peers around me determined to rise to the challenge and create something beautiful. For example, the Project Week projects this year were absolutely amazing, even though we weren't being given the High Pass Awards. This school's willingness to explore new topics for the sake of learning has truly inspired me to want to work with an intent to learn. Back in 7th grade, my class lost someone very special to us, and for a while, that sadness made it hard to focus. Sam O'Hara decided to find a way for all of us guys to get together and grow as a group and process our sadness. We started gathering once a month, and eventually it became the well-known boys' night, where we would spend hours together just being in the moment. Spending so much time together allowed us to have many moments of joy, such as singing Bohemian Rhapsody in the boys' bathroom crowded around 3 sinks, as well as singing Bohemian Rhapsody at the lip sync battle, and then also singing Bohemian Rhapsody just about everywhere else in the school. I've never felt happier or closer to a group of guys, and I truly believe that it has allowed us to grow up from scared little boys to slightly less scared little boys. This year, the 8th grade boys also lost someone special to them, which resonated throughout the rest of the school. Our class's past experience put us in a situation to help the community through these difficult times, although we were definitely not alone. Throughout the next few weeks, I saw so many people reaching out to the 8th graders by just giving them a smile or some cookies or a nice letter. This MacLaren community showed their love and support for those who were struggling, and it was amazing to see moments of joy creeping back into the MacLaren school. This shows how powerful this community can be and how easily a united community can change the attitude of a whole school. I have been so blessed to be a part of such an amazing community and to have been taught by some really amazing teachers. I will never forget interrupting Mr. Kelly at Starbucks on a Saturday morning just to ask him questions about philosophy. I also will never forget Sam standing up at the beginning of every single class with a new question for Mr. Dr. Holliday. And I will never forget singing What Makes You Beautiful every time someone would say One Direction. I will never forget taking an oversized tennis ball, hitting each other with it, and then naming the game Circle of Death. And I certainly will never forget my classmates. To my fellow seniors, thank you for an amazing 7 years, and I wish you all the best.
One of my favorite words was introduced to me on my first day of ancient Greek class, deinos. Carrying a connotation of cleverness and shrewdness, it can be translated as terrible, wonderful, or both at the same time. This word has been aptly used to describe human beings. As Aristotle says in his Politics, as human beings, if perfect in virtue, are the best of animals, so are they, if cut off from law and justice, the worst of all animals. I am continually shocked to see the magnificent and horrifying things done by humans. Take Sidney Carton in A Tale of Two Cities, a man who lives a dissipated, wasted life, and yet, when push comes to shove, makes a sacrifice few could ever do. Take the numerous atrocities that occur every day on our streets, and then look into our faculty room and find dedicated men and women working together to serve their students in the mission of MacLaren. There are 7.8 billion humans on Earth. How can, as we see in the Brothers Karamazov, there be both honorable men like Alyosha, and horrible men like his father Fyodor, not only in the same species, but also in the same family. I often want to ignore this unsettling question. I've tried to convince myself that as long as I am mostly good, I needn't worry about the rest of humanity. But then I'm reminded of a favorite passage from Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. It has convicted me every time I've heard it. Scrooge is talking to the ghost of Marley, trying to convince Marley and himself that they were not all that bad as men, being good men of business. "Business!" cried the ghost, wringing its hands again. "Mankind was my business. The common welfare was my business. Charity, mercy, forbearance, and benevolence were all my business. The dealings of my trade were but a drop of water in the comprehensive ocean of my business." Being responsible for all of mankind is a daunting prospect. I've been overwhelmed just thinking about my own MacLaren community. However, someone once told me that before I can change the world, I need to change my own heart. In an excerpt from Solzhenitsyn's Gulag Archipelago, read to my class earlier this year, Solzhenitsyn reflects on the unjust suffering and imprisonment he has experienced for 7 years under Stalin's regime. In the end, he comes to the following conclusion. "Gradually, it was disclosed to me that the line separating good and evil passes not through states, nor between classes, nor between political parties either, but right through every human heart, and through all human hearts. This line shifts. Inside us, it oscillates with the years. Even within hearts overwhelmed by evil, one small bridgehead of good is retained. And even in the best of all hearts, there remains a small corner of evil. It is impossible to expel evil from the world in its entirety, but it is possible to constrict it within each person. The battle of life is not an Avengers movie in which the good guys kill the bad guys. The battle is in each and every one of our hearts. It seems that no good, no truth, no beauty can exist in this world unless it exists in us first. I suppose that is why it is important for us to have seminars, to study calculus, to create art and music. Without this education, how could we go into the world and create good societies? How could we know the truth of how the world works? How could we partake in the beauty around us? My wish for this class is that we use the education we've received as a starting point to move the line in our hearts. Only then will we be able to transform our world for the better. Thank you.
So before they sit down, I would like to present the highest award given to a student at Thomas MacLaren School. Unlike the way some schools select valedictorians, not only do we look for students who have reached the highest level of academic achievement, but we also want to uphold students who clearly model the pursuit of goodness, truth, and beauty, and who are actively invested as lifelong learners. Mr. Von Beck offers this anecdote about Hunter Adam. This year, Hunter built and programmed an electronically operated catapult whose capabilities he demonstrated in physics class by launching a goldfish, which he had caught in his mouth. I'm assuming that's a cracker, with a diving leap. Upon standing up from the floor, he walked into a seminar room and talked about James Joyce. This is just one image which gives an insight into the zeal, good-humoredness, and humility which Hunter continually made manifest in the classrooms and hallways of MacLaren. Juliet Hall deeply believes in the pursuit of truth and the importance of beauty. She is never content to half understand something and is always willing to be moved or amazed by what she is learning. She is fierce. From the soccer field to the seminar room to her beloved myrmidons, Juliet brings the highest standards, but has a heart for loyalty and compassion as well. Emily Grace Kirkwood always has something on her mind. She is deeply reflective and committed to doing what it takes to achieve excellence for its own sake. She was an outstanding ambassador on behalf of MacLaren to Colorado's House Education Committee, speaking eloquently to our state representatives about what is at stake in school funding. And as many of you know, her MATLAB program demonstrating how to fold a paper crane is legendary. Please help me to honor the recipients of the 2020 Graduate Award, Hunter Adam, Juliet Hall, and Emily Grace Kirkwood. Very disinfected awards. Okay, next, I have the very great honor to introduce to you our commencement speaker, Mr. Nico Alvarado. You know and love Mr. Alvarado as a longtime faculty member, particularly beloved for his annual reading of Truman Capote's A Christmas Memory. Mr. Alvarado received a Master of Fine Arts in English from the University of Iowa Writers' Workshop, where he was a Maytag Fellow and a Teaching Writing Fellow. After teaching literature and writing at the University of Iowa and the Colorado School for the Deaf and Blind, he joined our faculty to become a Lit Comp teacher. One spring day, 3 years ago, when it looked like we would be able to purchase this property, I approached Mr. Alvarado. It was clear to the board that this campus afforded us the opportunity to finally expand into an elementary school, but to do so, we'd need to submit a revised charter application in the fall. Mr. Alvarado, I said, how would you like to start a school? Would you like to spend this summer researching curricula and pedagogy, turn around to help a massive grant to fund all of the startup equipment and furniture, learn some HR and school finance and all that goes into running a school? How's it sound? Sound good? Well, happily for MacLaren, Mr. Alvarado agreed. He founded a school. Over 300 new students arrived the next year. That is more students than were in the entire school when you enrolled in the 6th grade. But can you even imagine the school now without our young friends in blue and gray singing in the hallway? MacLaren will never be the same. Generations of students will benefit from the hours and hours of Mr. Alvarado's labor. His vision from the first was simple. Can we create a place where kids get to be kids? Can we keep rigor at the forefront? Can kids learn a lot and yet still be children? Still get plenty of time to run around and play and have leisure in their day? The answer, it turns out, is yes, they can. And MacLaren will never be the same. I, for one, am very much looking forward to hearing what Mr. Alvarado has to say to you.
Board of Directors, Mrs. Hall, faculty, parents and families and friends and alumni, and you, graduates. Sometime in the distant past, which is to say the late 1990s, a beautiful young woman of my acquaintance graduated from high school and went off to college. And when she got there, she looked around and saw a lot of other beautiful young people doing what beautiful young people in such circumstances are so fond of doing, which is to say, playing Frisbee and looking for parties. And she felt different. So she called home and her father answered the phone and he asked how she was doing. And she said, "Papa, I feel weird." And he said, Good. We raised you to be weird. This chipper admission provides a key that I hope can unlock for you the puzzle of these past 7 or so years. Graduates, we have raised you to be weird. The word weird has a fascinating etymology that you have touched on in encountering the weird sisters in Macbeth, but clearly when my wife was telling her papa that she felt weird, she meant it in the contemporary sense of being outside, different, apart, of odd or extraordinary character. It's lonely sometimes being weird. It discomfits. But it is, as Daniel Webster says of being human, a proud thing too. Your weirdness, such as it is, was not born of checking in your cell phones, or wearing a uniform, or being forbidden on pain of death to get in your car and go to McDonald's for lunch. And it was not even really born of your profoundly rigorous liberal arts education, one that has afforded you the right to say that you have grappled with Plato and Marx and Shakespeare and Hegel and multidimensional calculus and organic reactivity, that you have learned to paint with skill, that you have staged brilliant dramatic productions, that you have played Bach and Mozart at a very high level. No one can take that away from you. But your odd or extraordinary character consists, I hope, in something even deeper and more mysterious. I'll tell you a little story. When I left college, not having finished college, I moved to Portland, Oregon, where I would eventually finally finish college, and I worked jobs of, shall we say, varying consequence. I didn't have many friends there at that point, and because I was lonely and because I had always been a reader, when I wasn't working some crummy job, I spent a lot of time at the library. The Multnomah County Central Library is a magical place. It takes up a whole city block at Yamhill and 11th. 3 stories of books, long reading rooms with high ceilings and tall arched windows. I would go there with an empty backpack and roam the stacks, taking books down almost at random, reading a sentence or a stanza or a page, and anything that struck me went into the bag. And then I walked back in the rain to my little apartment on 5th, and I sat in my big, ugly yellow chair with the stack of books on the floor on my right, and I read. When I finished a book, or if I didn't care enough about it to finish it, I moved it to the stack on my left. And when all the stack had moved to the left, I went back to the library for another one. I'm sure I did other things during those lonely months in that city, but that's what I remember from that time. It was a very pure experience. I read dozens and dozens of books, novels and stories and essays and criticism and poems. I was not reading those books because I had been assigned them in a class or to impress anyone or even really for the pleasure of reading them. I was reading them because I wanted to know what was in them, and that was enough. It may have been the first time in my life that I was truly learning for its own sake. Now, you may not have felt that purity in all that you have done here at school, but it has been our intent. It has been our heart's desire that you too would fall in love with learning for its own sake. I know you have experienced it, but I want you to keep experiencing it all your life, to keep pursuing that still and quiet feeling. It will probably not make you rich. It may not even make you happier or a better person. It will certainly not give you power over other people. What I can promise is that it will enlarge you. It will deepen you. It will fill your cup. Another story. In my first months at MacLaren, I gave a student a detention. And Mr. Labady came up to me in the faculty room to ask about the circumstances. I believe the student, weeping, had contested the detention, and Mr. Labady was affording that student the chance to have his side of the story heard. To my great shame, I remember that I kind of rolled my eyes inwardly at first. I was defensive. On some level, I thought, I'm the teacher, you're the dean. back me up. But Mr. LeBeatty was mild and sober and gentle. And he didn't back me up, nor did he not back me up. He simply sought a just and a fair resolution. I think we agreed to reduce it from a 20-minute to a 10. I only saw a kid who merited a consequence, but Mr. LeBeatty saw a kid. He saw the child in front of him, one who had made a mistake and who also deserved simple fairness and dignity. That moment has stayed with me for a long time. I have learned from it if I have not always lived up to it. But that basic underlying assumption that the little boy across from me is in his need and in his tears is a marvel, is unto himself a singular universe of ideas and emotions and memories and hopes and gifts, and he deserves to be seen and known and heard. He deserves to be lifted up and not reduced. That assumption should have characterized your time here as well, and I hope that it has. And I hope that having known it yourself, it will characterize all the time that you have before you. To see the other in the fullness of his or her humanity is hard. It's not something our culture is great at. To practice it again and again takes discipline and effort, but it is worth it and urgent and right. Another little story. There was a 6th grader in my class one year who could not read or write, not really. During lit comp, he stared around and fidgeted and broke pencils and poked people with them. He listened to the discussion sometimes, and he appeared to follow the story somewhat, but he did not have the skills to do school. When the time came to turn in his thesis statement on the Golden Goblet, with its limited subject, specific predicate, that would be unified again and again in the supports of his paragraph, his thesis was distinctly missing, so we stayed in at lunch to write it. He started by saying that Gebu, Ronifer's monstrous half-brother, was bad. This is true. Gebu is bad. But it is self-evidently true. It's not an argument, it's a fact. So I asked him questions. What does he do that is bad? How is he bad? Why is he bad? We kept moving deeper and deeper into the story. He hadn't really read it, only listened, but he had been listening. Gebu was bad because he hurt Ronifer. He beat Ronifer. Why did he do this? What would cause him to be so cruel? He hates Ronifer. You're right, I said. He does. This had never actually occurred to me. Why? I said. Why does he hate him so much? I wasn't asking him to help him anymore. I was asking him to help me. Because he's weak, this boy said. Gebu hates Ronifer because he's weak. Let me hasten to assure you that yes, we did repredicate this to Ronifer's weakness causes Gebu to hate him. But more importantly, in that moment, I was the student, and that weak and struggling boy was my teacher. Remember that. Remember that you have been formed here to be not just a leader, not just a teller, but a listener. To be willing to sit at the feet of the humblest person, not because it's right or because you're supposed to, but because the richness of this world is to be found in other people. Graduates, you stand to inherit a strange world. On the cusp of adulthood, you look out at a global pandemic, a teetering economy, a body politic riven by mistrust and anger. If the mission of our school is to develop young people who are fully human and fully awake to the world, it necessarily follows that one can diminish one's own humanity. One can be asleep and deadened and indifferent to the world. How wonderful that you are not. You are indeed of odd or extraordinary character. We send you on your way, knowing that you are equipped to look both within and without, to listen well and to see clearly, to pursue a fully human life for yourself and for others. Act accordingly and carry our love with you as you go. Thank you. Before I go, it is my privilege to take a moment to recognize Mary Faith Hall. I'm breaking script. As you know, this is her last graduation as head of school. She has seen a generation of graduates through this program and through their commencement exercises, and that makes this day a poignant one. To recognize her profound dedication and service, on behalf of the faculty and the staff, and on behalf of Mr. Labady, the new head of the upper school, MacLaren is renaming a seminar room after Mrs. Hall. Congratulations have come in from all over the country and will be shared with her later today. Please join me in recognizing Mrs. Hall on this, her last graduation as a head of school at Thomas MacLaren.
Was off script, because this is where I'm supposed to thank Mr. Alvarado. That's what the script says. But I do want to thank Mr. Alvarado for speaking and for your vision and for bringing your dignity and humanity to MacLaren. We are all made more awake and alive by working with you. So thank you. All right. Now what's next? What you all are sitting in the hot sun for, your diplomas. So students who have achieved the highest level of academic standing will receive MacLaren Diploma with honors, or cum laude. Students graduating with honors will be announced as their name is called. As academic dean, Ms. Maslow will read the names of the graduates. Please come up when your name is called, and you will receive a very disinfected diploma.
Will the first row please rise? Graduating cum laude, Hunter John Adam. Graduating cum laude, Marshall Nicole Boer. Graduating cum laude, Jonathan Curtis Blankenship. Bridget Therese Brophy. Maria Jabez Israel Birch. Not present, Daniel Josiah Boozy Cruz. Kyra Christine Christensen. Graduating cum laude, Jack Allen Cintron. Alyssa Brianne Davis.
This one for you, Mom.
Will the second row please rise? Dixie Lee Elkins.
This one's for you, soccer.
William Badine Fuller. Graduating cum laude, Juliet Mathers Hall. Sophia Noel Hammis. Sydney Mae Ruth Hanks. Melody Joy Hoppy. Elise Kathleen Hurt. Isam Itzen. Hunter Kamale Johnson. Will the third row please rise? Annalise Cheryl Jordan. Richard Han Jung. Juliet Nicole Kidd. Not present, Joanne Taeyoung Kim. Grace Yuan Kirk. Graduating cum laude, Emily Grace Kirkwood. Ethan Tyler Lawson. Josiah Daniel Leong. Kyle Clifford Miller. Will the fourth row please rise? Lena Stephanie Mondragon. Graduating cum laude, Joanna Marie Mosley. Rory Shotlow Nixon. Seyfeldin Ahmed Noreldin. Graduating cum laude, Samuel Alexander O'Hara. Daniel Michael Basusta. Graduating cum laude, Samantha Jade Rehorst. Gianna Marie Rogers. Madeline Jane Ross. Will the fifth row please rise? Jackson Hawk Schooley. Emily Jane Spanley. Graduating cum laude, Reese Michael Stanton. Bailey Ann Stokes. Rachel Michaela Tamayo. Michael Andre Seplev. Devin Grace Euling. Jade Elizabeth Venser. Alexandra Lorraine Walinka.
Everybody's getting their seat. Well done, everybody. So before we send you off, it is always the head of school's responsibility to say some words to the graduates. And as you all just heard, this is my last time speaking as the head of school. Next year, I will be sitting over there, happily watching Mr. Labady do this. So as I was preparing these remarks, I thought, okay, this is my last shot. What do I really want to say? What do I really want these graduates to hear? Well, seems a little anticlimactic because it's what Emily Grace and Juliet and Hunter and Mr. Alvarado just said. But what I want you to hear is stay awake and alive to the world. Why? Because the world needs you. My students know that one of my favorite passages from the Brothers K is where the narrator describes Alyosha's generation. Alyosha, he notes, was a young man of our time, honest by nature, demanding the truth, seeking it, believing in that belief demanded immediate participation in it with all the strength of his soul. Unfortunately, these young men do not understand that the sacrifice of 5 or 6 years of their youthful life to hard, difficult studies, to learning, in order to increase tenfold their strength to serve the very truth that they love, such sacrifice is quite often almost beyond the strength of many of them. I look at you and I see young men and women much like those young men of Alyosha's generation, young men and women chomping at the bit to get out there and do something in the world. I'm sure even as I say this, you're thinking of the list of things you're ready to head out and tackle. And this is as it should be. The world needs you. Our mission statement says that our goal is to help young men and women become more awake and alive to the world, to be the agents of their own learning, to cultivate lifelong habits of heart and mind towards goodness and truth and beauty. You've heard this many times, even today. As I reflect on your years here, I think one of the reasons you are so well equipped to continue to do this is because of your genuine posture of learning. You have become better thinkers precisely because you have learned to disagree with each other and to do this well around a seminar table. Do you know how unusual this is? Yet you do it daily. Right? You probably didn't do this very well as freshmen, but you can do it now. Right? Is that really what the text is saying? Is your premise consistent? Excuse me, but what about that image way back on chapter 1? So on, so on. You've lost your ambitious edge of wanting to be right, and you've learned intellectual humility. Yes, you've learned humility at the feet of Aristotle, Aquinas, and A.G., but also at one another's feet. And you can do this because you trust each other. And you trust each other because you have spent hours together working out tight passages of Dvorak, staging and putting on productions ranging from Romeo and Juliet to Mad Women of Chaillot, collaborating with some sweat and even more tears on your MATLAB programs. Laboring together, you have grown in respect for each other. As I was writing this week, ballots showed up in our mailbox, and I thought, well, this class certainly is not going to vote the same. But you respect each other. Do you know how unusual this is? The world needs you. Love of learning is just that, love. Sense of wonder starts with an affinity for beauty and a restlessness for truth. It takes humility to know that you don't know. You have lived this humility by respecting that person sitting across the seminar table from you, someone you actually listen to before you say what's on your mind, listening in a way that might actually change your mind. And real persuasion takes love of the person across from you that you're trying to persuade. The world needs this. The world needs you. The world needs people ready to do the hard work of asking if the right questions are even on the table. Where there are what John Locke calls the inconveniencies of nature, remember those? Greed, ambition, self-love. The world needs goodness. The world needs you. Where there is coarseness and ugliness, the world needs beauty. The world needs you. Where there is confusion and disease and fear, the world needs truth. The world needs you. And you know that doing this takes work, and take a deep breath, because this is the work of a lifetime. Don't be tempted to take shortcuts. Like the young men of Alyosha's generation, be exhorted to be patient and think hard about what you need to do in order to increase tenfold your strength to serve the very truth that you love. If MacLaren has planted a seed, let the fruit indeed be tenfold. We're proud of you. We're excited to work alongside of you in the years to come. Congratulations. So now, before we bring these commencement exercises to a close, a final word of instruction. Would all present please put on your masks? Parents, we ask that you please remain seated until you are dismissed by family at the end of the ceremony. But before then, we have one more important thing to do. Graduates, would you please stand? And as tradition dictates, please move your tassels from the right to the left side of your cap. I now present to you the class of 2020 at Thomas MacLaren School.